Hi, my name is Kaylee Kopka, and like you, I'm a teacher in Pinellas County Schools. I'm here to introduce you to the new Marzano Focused Teacher Instructional Model and share with you some of the changes that have been made. So let's look at why the Marzano Research Center updated the instructional model. Evaluations evolve with updated research. The updated model has a greater focus on the most critical instructional elements. Observation trends and patterns from the field provided data that contributed to many of the changes. The Marzano Research Center received feedback from observers and teachers. This feedback was used to make updates to the instructional model. The updated model increases the focus on student evidence of learning and the implementation of rigorous standards. Finally, an inter-rater agreement among observers improves with a model that is more transparent and focused. This learning map may look familiar to you as it was included in the Focus Model video from the Teaching and Learning Department. An observation is when the instructional framework is used as a tool to provide feedback. This can be done during a walkthrough, formal observation, or targeted observation. The term evaluation is used to describe a collection of data that includes observations, student data, and professional growth. So what are the similarities between the new model and the older one? Some similarities you might notice. There are still 4 domains. Each of the domains includes elements. Some elements from the old model are the same, such as critical content. But what are some of the differences? We are moving from having 60 elements to 23 elements. Planning and instruction is based on standards. There are no longer numbers next to the domains and elements. All 60 elements from the old model are still represented within the 23 elements of the new focus model. Standards-based planning in the new model includes elements from the old model's Domain 2 and Domain 1's lesson segment involving routine events. Standards-based instruction in the new model includes elements from the old model's Domain 1, the lesson segment addressing content. Conditions for learning in the new model includes elements from the old model's Domain 1 lesson segment involving routine events and enacted on the spot. Elements from Domains 3 and 4 from the old model are included in the new model under professional responsibilities. Let's look at the sections of this new model. The blue oval at the top is Domain 1, Standards-Based Planning. On the right side of the page is a yellow box. This is Domain 2, Standards-Based Instruction. To the left is a gray square. This is Domain 3, Conditions for Learning. Along the bottom is a blue rectangle. This is Domain 4, Professional Responsibilities. Just as before, each of the elements in the focused model includes a protocol, which provides a more in-depth look into that element. Here is an example of a protocol from the new model. This example is from the element Identifying Critical Content from the Standards. I'm not going to go through each line, but I am going to highlight the new features that are included in the updated protocols. At the top of each protocol, you'll find the focus statement. This describes what the teacher's responsibility is for each element. Under the focus statement is the desired effect. The desired effect is either evidence or student-focused and describes what you want to see as a result of correctly implementing the strategy. Although we have always had desired effects, they were not previously included in the protocols. This is one of the new features. Some other new features of the protocols include example monitoring techniques and example adaptations a teacher can make after monitoring student evidence and determining how many students demonstrate the desired learning. At the bottom of each protocol is a scale. The scale here comes from the element, Identifying Critical Content from the Standards. Let's take a look to see how scoring has changed. To be rated at innovating, greater than 90% of student evidence has been monitored and shows the desired effect at the taxonomy level of the critical content. The rest of the scale should look familiar. The focus statement is included in applying and developing. This is saying that the strategy has been used correctly by the teacher. The difference in rating is dependent on the percent of student evidence that has been monitored and shows the desired effect at the taxonomy level of the critical content. In the developing category, less than the majority of student evidence has been monitored and shows the desired effect at the taxonomy level of the critical content. To be rated applying, the majority of your student evidence has been monitored and shows the desired effect at the taxonomy level of the critical content. For example, if I have a class of 20 students and I implement the instructional strategy correctly, then monitor 4 students for evidence of the desired effect, what would my rating be? If you said developing, you're correct. Great job! What would I be rated if I monitored 11 students for evidence of the desired effect? If you said applying, then you are correct because this would be the majority of students. Good work. Let's say I monitored 19 students for evidence of the desired effect. Then I would be rated at the innovating level because it is greater than 90%. We just reviewed the protocol and scale for the element identifying critical content from the standards in Domain 2, Standards-Based Instruction. When reviewing the protocols, you'll find that the rating scales in Domains 2 and 3 state that to receive innovating, greater than 90% of student evidence has been monitored and shows the desired effect. For Domains 1 and 4, the description for innovating changes from being student-focused to being teacher-focused. Let's look at an example from Domain 4, Professional Responsibilities. In the scale for the element Maintaining Expertise in Content and Pedagogy, the description for innovating reads, helps others by sharing evidence of how to develop expertise in content area and classroom instructional strategies. Our old model used to say, is recognized as a leader. In the new focused model, the description is more focused on the action of helping others. This is true for many of the elements in Domains 1 and 4 of the focused model. There are 3 types of observations: a formal, targeted, and walkthrough. There will no longer be informal observations. A formal and targeted follow the same observation cycle. The cycle consists of a pre-observation conference, an observation that is at least 30 minutes in length, and finally, a post-observation conference. If you are on an annual, professional, or continuing contract, then you will receive a minimum of 2 formal observations. If you have been newly hired to the district and have a probationary contract, then you will receive a minimum of 3 formal observations. Targeted observations are a new type of observation because they are teacher requested and can include any element in Domains 1 through 4. Targeted observations are only for teachers on an annual, continuing, or professional contract. Only 1 targeted observation may be completed per school year. The request for a targeted observation must be scheduled by the teacher within 5 days after one of the post-observation conferences. A teacher can request up to 4 elements they would like to target during the observation. Identifying critical content from the standards is an element that is required to be marked during every observation. The other elements being targeted are the choice of the teacher. The observation cycle for both formal and targeted observations includes the pre- and post-conference. A post-conference will be scheduled within 5 days after an observation. When preparing for a post-conference, you may choose to bring evidence for any element that was scored in Domain 2, Conditions for Learning, and Domain 3, Standards-Based Instruction, during the observation. It is not necessary to bring evidence to the post-conference for elements in Domains 2 and 3 that were not observed and did not receive a score. A teacher may bring evidence to a post-conference related to any element in Domain 1, Standards-Based Planning, and Domain 4, Professional Responsibilities. Within 5 days after a post-conference, the teacher may submit additional evidence to be considered by the administration. A walkthrough is a brief visit and was part of the old model. It is a great way for administrators to provide written feedback through eye observation. A walkthrough can either be evaluative or non-evaluative for elements in Domain 1, Standards-Based Planning, and Domain 4, Professional Responsibilities. For elements in Domain 2, Conditions for Learning, and Domain 3, Standards-Based Instruction, a walkthrough is always non-evaluative. We have reviewed the different types of observations included in the focus model. Remember, if you are on an annual, professional, or continuing contract, then you will receive a minimum of 2 formal observations. If you have been newly hired to the district and have a probationary contract, then you will receive a minimum of 3 formal observations. Other updates include the following element requirements. 20 out of 23 elements must be scored by the end of the school year. Element 4, critical content, must be rated in every observation. Element 13, cognitively complex tasks, must be scored at least 1 time during the school year. All elements are rated in Domains 1, 3, and 4. Since we are no longer using the conjunctive scoring method, let's walk through an example of how the instructional practice score will be calculated once observation data has been entered. On this spreadsheet example, you can see the first column is the domains, the second column are the elements listed by number, the third and fourth columns represent data collected during the first and second formal. The fifth column represents data collected during a targeted observation. In the new model, only the highest rating for each element will count towards the domain score. This is why there is a column labeled highest rating. Also, notice that element 4 and element 13 are highlighted in yellow. This is because in domain 2, standards-based instruction, the element 4, identifying critical content, and element 13, helping students engage in cognitively complex tasks, are required. Before I can begin calculating my score, I need to find the highest score for each element. I'll do this by highlighting the highest score for each element in green. Remember, the highest score for each element is the score that will count. These scores will be entered into the column labeled highest rating. Our example will focus on domain 2. In domain 2, standards-based instruction, the element 4, identifying critical content, and element 13, helping students engage in cognitively complex tasks, are required, so these scores are highlighted in yellow. The other 5 highest scores in domain 2 will also count toward the domain score. These have been highlighted in blue. The 3 lowest scores in domain 2, excluding the required elements, will be dropped. These have been highlighted in red. Now, it's time to calculate my score in domain 2. First, I'll add the highest ratings. When I add, I will only include the yellow and blue scores. The scores in red have been dropped. This comes to the sum of 25. Second, I'll divide by the number of rated elements. Although there are 10 elements in domain 2, I will only divide by 7 because the 3 lowest scored elements have been dropped. When I divide 25 by 7, I get a very long decimal number. In eye observation, it rounds to the nearest hundredth. So in this case, my domain score would be 3.57. Third, I'll weigh the domain score. The weight for domain 1, standards-based planning, is 14%. The weight for domain 2, standards-based instruction, is 34%. The weight for domain 3, conditions for learning, is 34%. The weight for domain 4, professional responsibilities, is 18%. So, to weigh the domain 2 score, I will multiply by 0.34. The product is my weighted score. In this example, it would be 1.21. The final step is to add the weighted scores from each of the domains. The sum is the instructional practice score. This score can then be compared to the following scale. Highly effective is 3.45 or higher. Effective is 2.45 to 3.44. Developing needs improvement is 1.45 to 2.44. Unsatisfactory is 1.44 or less. The final score calculation will remain the same as previous years. To calculate the final evaluation score, you need the instructional practice score, student growth score, and the deliberate practice score. Each of these scores are weighted according to the chart here. The weight of the instructional practice score is 56.7%. The weight of the student growth score is 33.3%. The weight of the deliberate practice score is 10%. After the scores are weighed, you add them and compare the sum to the scale. For our example, this would result in a final score of 3.64, which is highly effective. The process for completing deliberate practice plans and eye observation have not changed. Administrators will meet with instructional staff to discuss and approve deliberate practice goals, and will meet to discuss progress and provide feedback throughout the school year. At the conclusion of the implementation of the DPP, the administrator will assign a rating based on the scale. A score of 0 or unsatisfactory will be given if the staff member did not write a deliberate practice plan. A score of 3 or developing needs improvement will be given if the staff member attempted to implement the deliberate practice process, but with major parts missing. A score of 7 or effective will be given if the staff member wrote a deliberate practice plan. The staff member implemented the parts of the plan, including stated professional development. The staff member did not get the growth results described in the plan. A score of 10 or highly effective will be given if the staff member wrote a deliberate practice plan, implemented the parts of the plan, including stated professional development, and achieved the growth results described in the plan. There are many professional development opportunities that are applicable to the Marzano focused instructional model. These opportunities are advertised in the monthly Chalk Talk publication. There are many ways to log into iObservation. You can go directly to the Effective Educators website, you can access the link through your PCS portal, or you can log in through Clever. For answers to specific questions related to the evaluation process or iObservation, please contact the Department of Professional Development. Thanks, and have a great school year.